Hey everybody. So here I am with Ray. How you doing, Ray?
Doing good.
Good. So we'll go over 3 topics in Photoshop: selections, layers and layer masks, and tonal correction and color grading, which technically is 4, but snuck color grading in on the third one to be generous with everybody today. So should be a lot of fun.
I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good. And just ask questions as we go. And if it still doesn't kind of stick, do understand that the recording will be there for you and everyone to review till your heart's content. So, all right. So let me switch over the view and start off with this view. And you can see my Photoshop with the girl in the kind of yellow background,
Yep.
right, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so first thing is selections. So here I am with this image. And so you can see in the layers panel on the right, and it says background. So that means that when any image comes in, it's automatically flattened. And then what I always do, just to work somewhat non-destructively, is I always make a copy of the layer. And you can right click. So you've set up on your mouse to right click.
Yeah.
You can always say layer from background or duplicate layer. But what I like to do is a little bit of a keyboard shortcut. And I won't go over too many keyboard shortcuts if you want to focus on kind of like beginner to intermediate level. But this is one that I use almost every single day. So I thought I'd share it. So if you're on a Mac, you just do Command J. Think of it as jumping the layer, Command J. If you're on a PC, it would be Control J. And then there you can see layer 1 at the top. So it just creates a simple layer. And then when I work and also teach, I like to be very focused. So if I hit the F key, it gives me this view with a medium gray background, a neutral gray background. So I can just focus on this image without all the distractions of the other open images.
Very cool.
Okay. And what I tend to do, since I'm going over selections and showing layers and layer masks, I turn off the background layer just by going to the left where the eye icon is and just click it off. And you can't see anything because it's the same type of thing. If I turn the top one off, you'll see there's a grid showing transparency.
Okay.
But I keep the top one on. And so I go over to the toolbar. I'll bring it over here. And then when I go to this section, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the magic wand tool, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I right click, you have object selection tool, quick selection tool, and magic wand. So I'll show you all those. So first, if I choose object selection tool, and then I zoom out again, anytime you choose a tool, you should always take a look at the options bar up top. So
Okay.
when I choose that object selection tool, you'll see that it says object finder. And then where my cursor is, you'll see there's this kind of refresh icon. See it spinning?
Yeah.
You would just click that. And what that does is just reading your image. So then when you bring that tool over your image, it automatically does that. Isn't that pretty cool?
That is really cool.
Yeah. So without even really doing anything, just choosing that tool, which is the object selection tool, just by hovering after I click that kind of refresh icon in the options bar up top, just by hovering, it wants to create that selection. And then I would just click, click, and then it becomes a selection.
How cool.
So then if I zoom in, you can see that the selection is pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty solid. And sometimes it's hit or miss. It's always best to have a subject, a person with a solid color background like this. If not this, then white. Sometimes black is a bit of a problem because the black will interfere with, say, the black sleeves she's wearing and parts of the helmet. But, something lighter like white, yellow like this is good. And then one thing that I tend to do that I find to be very helpful that a lot of people don't know about is at the bottom of the toolbar, there is this icon of like a rectangle with a circle. And if you double click, it pops up a thing called quick mask options. And what I do is I set it to selected areas because that's what I'm focusing on. And I can change it to any color I want by clicking here. So I'm going to choose green as an example. and the opacity is set to 36. That's fine. I'm going to hit OK. The preview is green.
Okay.
And all that means is you can then click that icon again and you get back to the selection. If you click it again, you get back to the quick mask preview. So the preview of quick mask is showing you your selection as a solid color so you can see how good your selection is. And then it's a simple keyboard shortcut, but you can also toggle before and after by hitting the Q key. So Q goes back to the selection. Q again goes back to quick mask. Okay.
Very cool.
It's just a great way to be able to see how good your selection is. So Q, I can see it in the green preview. Okay. Now, after I've done that object selection tool, there's also the quick selection tool. And I'll show you that directly, but while I'm already in the selection, when I've switched to the quick selection tool, if I hover over to the area by her hand and I zoom in, Command plus a few times, hold the space bar to get the hand tool and pull down. I can go to this area, and if I hit my left bracket, I can make the brush smaller. And then by holding the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a PC, if I click and drag this area, it will take that away from the selection. So I'll be able to have that area erased.
That is amazing.
Right. So we have the right here. Sounds like your dog is.
That's my dog. He's out there saying hello, or probably. I think he's got all of them going now. Oh my God.
It's all right. I'll just have to speak louder.
Yeah, it's time for doggy Xanax.
Right. Okay. So we have this selection. So if we hit Q, you can see how solid the selection is, and then maybe
yeah. He gets everybody going. Yes.
Okay, cool out, chill out, dog.
They're having a little party right now. I am so sorry.
It's all right. I'll just focus. So we have that selection. So just for the sake of the lesson, I'm going to do a Command D to deselect, or you go up to the select menu up top and you say deselect, the second choice down, just Command D, it shows you on the right. And then I'm back to, no selection. So then I will preview that second tool. So I'm in the quick selection tool. So the way this one works, and I'll zoom out a little bit, space bar, get the hand tool to move up and let go. When I click and drag, that selects parts of the image. And then it's set to auto select, like auto add to the selection. Okay. So I'll do a Command E, add to selection. See, it's got the plus sign here. So that just means that while you're working with it, you don't need to hold any other keyboard shortcuts or anything. You just keep dragging different parts of the image. And the way that this works well is you go from like the middle area like I am towards the edge, but not too close to the edge. So as you can see, I'm not even getting that close to the edge at all. And it's selecting the whole kind of like leg area. Space bar, pull up. And then this area, I'll zoom in, Command plus a few times. Holding the Option key, I can just click and drag, and it kind of takes away from that middle area that I want to erase from. And then if it overlaps like this, it defaults back to add to selection. So I can just drag again, make that selection. I hit the left bracket a couple times to make the brush smaller. Hold Option key and click again to get that just little section there. Okay, good. So I hold the space bar to get the temporary hand tool to move around in my image. And then it's set to add. So I just click and drag to add more to the image. Command minus to zoom out. And then it's selecting that. So it's done a pretty good job. And let me grab this arm too. And then I hit Q again so I can see that preview. And now the only thing I can see that it didn't do as well is the areas in between the helmet and the hand. So I go back to Q. I hold down the Option key. I hit the, go back to the bracket a couple times, make it larger. then the Option key, and then when I drag here, it's deselecting that area. Option, click, drag, and it's deselecting that area. Command plus a few times to zoom in.
Andrew, I've got a question. Is the Option key for just for Mac, or is that for PC as well?
Okay, good question. So on a Mac, it's Option. While you're in this brush, the quick selection tool.
Okay.
And on a PC, it's Alt. So it'd be Alt and then click and drag to deselect.
Okay.
All right, so that's pretty good. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect just for this example, but it did pretty good. And then I do Command 0 to get a full view. Command plus to zoom in just a little bit. And then if I hit Q again, you can see the selection is solid.
That's really
so cool. That's like, two different ways of doing it. And then I'm going to do Command D. And then I go back and I right click again. There's also the magic wand tool. So a lot of people make fun of the magic wand tool, call it the tragic wand. And that's because it's kind of hit or miss. But if you have a solid background like this, if you click. Okay, so first thing to note is anytime you choose any tool, you should always check your options bar. So I was doing something recent that had to be very specific, and the tolerance was low. So if I go up here, you can see the tolerance is too low. So if I move my cursor over the word tolerance, a hand comes up with 2 arrows, and it's called a scrubby slider. I can just click and then pull to the right to pull that number up higher. So I'll make it like 13.
That's really cool.
Zoom out. And now when I click the background, a bigger chunk gets selected. Now with this one, with the magic wand tool, you do have to hold down the shift key to add to your selection. So every time I hold shift and click, it's adding a little bit more to the selection. And it's looking for similar kind of ranges of that color yellow. And so if I click this darker yellow, it's looking for the darker areas. When I click the lighter ones. Yeah, so you're just going to keep shift clicking, shift click.
That is really cool.
But as you can see, it's not as fast as using the other 2 selection tools, but I just want to give you a whole range of options. Sometimes if it's like a solid white background and they're wearing like a blue or red dress or something, it might do a really great job at selecting. Here, there's a range from dark to lighter areas of the background, so it gets a little kind of choppy. But yeah, I just keep shift clicking. Zoom in a little bit. So every time I hold shift, you see a plus sign to the cursor. So that means it's adding to it. So I just keep on holding down shift and clicking, and that keeps just adding to the selection.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And I just, do it until it's solid.
I've been trying to like paint out things in photos, but this is amazing.
Yeah. And so then hold space bar to get the hand tool so I can pull down. And then I'm going to shift click this area here, this area there. I'm going to zoom in on her head. So where the hand is on her right hand, our left side. If I hold shift and click there, I can also select that area. Click here so it's a little bit more solid. So you're just kind of like shift clicking until it becomes a solid selection.
That's really
so if
cool.
You see like marching ants, like the marching ants is the selection, but if you see it up here at the top where there's a kind of like a mountain view of it, it means it's not solidly selected. So I hold down shift again and click until it's a bit more solid. And there's a couple little dots that I just kind of click on until it becomes solid. Okay. And then once again, if I hit Q, it shows you that's my selection.
That's very
good,
cool.
Except for around the feet. So I zoom in a little bit, hold down shift, and then click to select. So just so you know, it's a pretty good selection, but if it went a little bit like on her pants or something, you would hold down the option key, which would be the minus, and then when you click, that would deselect from that. Just in, and shift click to get that area. And it's pretty good.
It's really good.
Go back to 0. Yeah, so cute. So then, of course, if you are selecting the background like this with the magic wand, you're going to want to either right-click and choose Select Inverse, And I like right clicking because when you right click, you get so many options. You don't have to go up and reach for the menus. So right click in the middle of the selection, choose select inverse, or you go up to the select menu up top, select inverse. And then now when I hit Q, she's selected. And then I can knock her out from the background type of thing.
That's very cool.
So I know I'm teasing you with all these selections, but not knocking out the background or making a mask. But that's what I'm going to do next. So that's kind of a review of the selection tools. And then there's one more that I'm a big fan of. If you go to the window, you will see any panel. So that's how you access any panel. So if you showed up to you opened your Photoshop and layers was missing, you don't freak out. You just go to window, choose layers, and there's your layers panel.
Oh, how cool.
So yeah, just think of everything is through the window. You're looking through the window. The window menu is all your panels.
Okay.
And you'll notice at the bottom, just so you can see, let me zoom in a little bit first. If I go to window and I go down to the bottom, you'll notice that it also lists at the bottom any image that is open. So if you're you hit the F key and you're in that full screen view and you didn't want to get out of that view, you could just choose any other image you want to work on, and it shows that they're all there in Photoshop. Okay.
Okay.
So come back out. So in this case, I wanted to show you, if I go to window, properties. So this panel pops out. And when you're on a layer like this, there are two quick actions at the bottom. So if you open the panel, it looks like this. And you're like, where are those options? You have to just click the little arrow to the left of quick actions. And there are two options you get. And what this does is this uses Adobe Sensei, which is their artificial intelligence. And there are two options that are really quick and very helpful. First is, if I click select subject, Adobe Sensei reads the image and makes a really good selection from the get-go. Pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's just a click of a button, and there it is, select subject. You'll also notice in general that if you were to choose any of the selection tools, if you look up in the option bar, I'll zoom in, you have select subject right there.
Oh my gosh.
So always look for kind of like the hints of how they're trying to make your life easier. I know people think that there's too many options in Photoshop, but if you look around, there are ways that they make things a bit more streamlined. Okay, so once again, I go back to the properties panel. The first thing I did was select subject, and that made the selection. But if you have a layer and you click on remove background, boom. Not only does it make a selection, but it knocks out the background for you and adds a built-in layer mask.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just a simple click in the properties panel on your subject. Obviously, and let me just hit the, so if I hold down the option key, that's just showing you how good the mask is.
That's very cool.
So hit option again. And if I hold down the shift key and click on the layer mask, it turns it off temporarily. My point is, you always want to have a pretty much solid background for this to work as best as it can. So, obviously if she was in front of trees or something with multiple tonal ranges or textures, it wouldn't be as clean. That's a nice way to get a selection with a built-in layer mask. And then just to review, I do Command Z a few times to get back to layer one. If I were to have gone to the object selection tool, and once again, I go up to the top and I click on that refresh. So it reads the image. Then when I hover, it's still doing its thing. Come on, refresh. Then when I hover, it automatically has that nice kind of selection. And then I just click. And then it becomes a selection. And as I move my mouse, my cursor away, you can see the selection. Same concept is once I have a selection by using that tool, the object selection tool or the quick selection tool, I would hover my cursor over the selection. I right click and I choose the third option down, feather. And if it's something realistic, I usually choose 0.8 pixels for the feather radius. What that means is feather just gives it a little bit of soft edge. Okay. So if it's something realistic, it's 0.8 or 1. If it's something that's blending in like a patch of grass, it might be 3 or 4. And if it's something you really want the edge to be lighter, soft and kind of even blurred a little bit, such as the sun or a moon, you could choose like 12 or 14.
Okay.
So in this case, I just say 0.8, hit OK. And then when I click down here on the layer mask icon, it automatically knocks out the background for me. So once again, let me zoom in to show you. That is now it's saying add vector mask because I just did add a layer mask. So it wants to do the next thing. But if I did not have a selection, so if I do Command Z, now when I hover, it's not giving me a preview, but that's how you would do the add layer mask, that icon. Okay. So that's layer masks. Now, if I click here where the plus sign is, I create a new empty layer and I just click on the name and drag and pull to bring it underneath.
Okay.
And then I can go up to the menu and say edit, fill, and say I choose foreground color, which is the red. So it defaults to that. I just hit OK. It fills it, right? So now I can see how good my selection is. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
If I go to the top, one thing that's very important to know, though, I zoom in a little bit, the image. With the built-in layer mask, you want to make sure that there's a white frame around the layer mask. So if I go here, if I'm on this layer, but there's a white frame around my image on the left, and then I want to work on the layer mask, and I say, okay, well, I want to get rid of this area by the hand, you'll see that the foreground color is red, not black. The minute you click here and you see a white frame around it, it defaults to black and white. So black with a brush, and I hit the bracket a few times to make it smaller. I click and drag, that would erase. The only thing is, do check your options bar. The flow is only set to 12. For something like this, I want to pull it all the way to the right for 100. Okay. So that when I paint here, it's erasing all of it out. See, so it's showing the red background.
Okay.
So zoom back out. So yeah, so that's one thing to be aware of with working with layer mask. Always look to where the white frame is. If it's here, and then you think you're going to be painting on something, you'd be painting red right on your image.
Gotcha.
If you're here with the white frame around the layer mask, then when you paint with black, you erase. And if I hit X to toggle, or the double arrow icon, when I paint with white, it would bring back. So black erases, white preserves.
Okay.
So that's layer mask. And so by putting the red background, I wanted to show you that if I'm in the layer mask and I'm in a brush and I hit the right bracket a few times, or I right click and change the size here with the slider, I get a larger brush, maybe even go a bit bigger. Okay, 478. When I'm in that layer mask and then I go up to the flow section at the top in the options bar, I'm going to zoom in. If I hover over the word flow and pull it down to say,
oh wow,
35, then when I come back to my image and I paint, it partially erases because the flow is like 35. So the first brush is gentle, and then the more I do it, the more solid it is. But you'll see that it's literally erasing to the background. See where the little kind of transparent grid is?
Yeah.
So that's what the layer mask does. So if I turn the background on, you'll see. So therefore, if I didn't like that, and it obviously looks strange, I would just switch it to white as foreground, and then I can paint back the layer mask. But just be careful that if you're painting back the middle area, if I go over here, it is painting back some of the yellow because it's adding back to the original. So just be careful of your boundaries there. That's how you like blend, two images. Or, you can partially blend an area through the background. That's like a layer mask. And let me just kind of clean this up so it's a little bit more solid. Okay. So
you just put me away.
It's pretty cool, right? So selections, then layer masks.
That's very cool.
Then I wanted to do a little bit of tonal correction and color grading, and then I might composite these for fun. So
that would be killer to see you do that.
Yeah. So I took a quick kind of little iPhone photo of me. I'm not drunk in this photo. My eyes are just tired from reading at night. So I zoom out a little bit. So a way that I tend to like to work, and I always tend to try to work non-destructively. So I'll do a Command J, create a new layer, as you can see over here, layer 1.
That's killer.
And what people tend to want to do is they will go up to Image, Adjustments, and use like curves or levels. So if I go to curves, up comes the curves panel, and then this would affect midtones, darks, lights, all that, right? But a way that I like to work, because it's just so easy and it's very incremental in the degree that it works, is using the Camera Raw filter. Now, if I go into Camera Raw filter under the filter menu, even though it's its own new layer, whatever I do would be so-called destructive, right?
Okay.
But if I hover over layer 1 and I right click and I say convert to smart object, you'll see that there's, let me just zoom in. You'll see that there's a smart object kind of thumbnail icon. It's an icon for smart object, right? So that means that when I'm in this image, and I'll hit F so we don't have the distraction of the background.
Oh, wow.
Weird to see myself like that's weird. But when I go to filter, Camera Raw, which is just like the 6th one down, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. It opens the Camera Raw panel. I just do a Command minus to zoom out a couple times. And then, as you can see on the right, there are all the different panels you would need. So if you go to basic, first one is exposure, and that affects the overall exposure. And then I could pull to the right contrast, give it a little bit more contrast, maybe the t-shirt a little bit darker. If I pull highlights to the left, you'll watch the background. It brings back a little bit more information to the background that was kind of blown out, especially on the left side. You'll see a little bit more information here.
Yeah.
And then under shadows, if I move shadows to the right, that opens up the shadows a bit and the blacks as well. If I move the white slider to the right, that gives a little bump to the whites, a little bit brighter. Texture is a nice way of giving a subtle sharpening to it. People used to use clarity, but it would get very kind of grungy look very quickly. So I'm a bigger fan of texture. So I just kind of move that a little bit to the right, get a little bit sharper. Now, if you go to the left, you can see it looks like it's been blurred. It gives it soft looks. So that's the thing about Camera Raw that I love, though, is everything's very easy. And all you have to do is go right or left. Like if you forget, you just go right and see what it does. And if that's not what you want, you go left, and that's what it does. So the majority, you will go right. So you'll open up exposure, add contrast.
Okay.
But if you, like with highlights, you usually go left because you're decreasing. So you're going negative to bring back some information. So with texture, I just go a couple, maybe up to 14. And then for vibrance, so saturation will saturate or add color to everything, where vibrance tends to add a bit of saturation to the areas that are lacking in saturation. And it also protects your skin tones. So if I go and move vibrance a little to the right, it is going to make me a bit more orange. If I go all the way to the right, it's going to be, can't protect the skin tones that much. But now in this case, I might want to move the vibrance a little bit to the left. And so it takes down some of that kind of orangey neon color that I had. And, so once I hit OK, it brings me back to Photoshop. So if I turn the eye on, eye off, you see before and after. And then there's also the smart filter preview on the left. Turn eye on and off for preview. And then you'll also see this white kind of box area. That's the built-in layer mask. So if I'm working on this and I'm like, well, I like the way that I made myself a little bit lighter, but I think I want to bring the darkness of the background back in. All I do is I make sure that I'm in that layer mask. So the white framer on the layer mask.
Okay.
I switch the bottom colors. So black is my foreground. I'm in a brush. The flow is already set to 35 and 100 opacity.
Okay.
And then now when I paint, I'll be able to paint back the background to bring kind of more of a darker background in a subtle way, but it's just a way that you have that kind of control.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's bringing back some back. and you'll see the preview over here. So if I go over to the right,
Oh yeah.
the layer mask, whatever is white is being shown, whatever is black is being erased, whatever is kind of gray is partially erased.
Okay.
So that's just the layer mask. But the great thing about this is if you're working on something like this and you save it and you come back a couple days to a week later, you can just, make sure you save it as a PSD or layered Photoshop file. All the layers will be here. And then you can just double click on the word Camera Raw filter, and that launches Camera Raw again. So you don't even have to go up to the menu. And then therefore you could say, you know what, maybe I do want a little bit more vibrant. So then you can bring Vibrance back on, or you can make it a little bit less vibrant. So that's a great way of working with smart objects with your images, so you can go back and forth and work non-destructively.
Very cool.
Okay. So I also said I wanted to go over color grading before I do a little bit, some compositing elements. So with this, might as well do it with this. There are a couple different ways of doing it, but one, you can also go to Camera Raw. So just click on Camera Raw filter in the layers panel. Brings you to this view. And then you'll notice the different panels. So you have basic, curve, detail, color mixer. There's one called color grading. As it says here, color grading allows you to stylize your photo by adding color tints to the shadows, midtones, and highlights. So I just click on the little arrow to the left. It opens up. And there's two different ways, two different direct ways of working with it, and another option that I'll show you. First is when you first come into it, you have your midtones, your shadows, bottom left, and highlights, bottom right. At the same time, if you didn't want to work in this smaller view, you see these kind of icons at the top. So if I click on the top, the shadows one, you have a bigger view of the shadows. And this is the way I like to work. I mean, you can work this way, but I like to be able to be very more precise. So what this does, color grading, is like it said, it gives a stylization of adding color tints. So I could say, okay, maybe I'll go to highlights first. And if I click here, it's adding a green highlight, right?
Yeah.
And the way that this works is there's two ways. Once you've clicked and put a circle there, you made a dot. If you go to the end, it's very saturated, 100% saturated. But clicking and holding on that dot as I pull it towards the middle, now it's 0 saturation. So you can choose the intensity of that saturation. And of course, as you move around, you can change, is it more of a yellow green or a bluish green? So you can move that. But if you point here and you say, well, I'm not that comfortable moving the circle around, you can just go down to the sliders and say, okay, I want the saturation to be this much. And you'll see that the circle moves accordingly.
Oh, that's really cool.
So you have one of two ways of doing it. It's pretty easy. I really like it. So I can just say, okay, a little bit of touch of green. So bring the saturation down to 28. Then I might say, okay, in the darks, like our shadows, maybe I'll add a kind of bluish. So I'll add blue, and then I can once again either move the saturation slider or the circle, and I kind of bring it back. Okay. So that's one way of doing it, right? And like I said, if I want to, I can just bring the circle back to 0, and I go back to highlights, bring the circle back to 0. Now, so you have your shadows, like your midtones and your highlights. And then on the right is one called global. So if you click on global, this gives an overall color to it. So if I wanted this to have like a kind of bluish look, the minute I click on blue, it's taking over pretty much the whole image, adding a blue haze. And then of course, as I click on the circle and pull towards the middle, it's less and less. So this is 0. This is like 34, 70, and then that would be 100. So global is kind of like an overall look. And let me show you where this gets pretty creative. I'll just hit cancel to go back, and I'll say, yeah, I'm fine. I already have this tonal correction, but I'll do once again, as a review, Command J on a Mac to create a new layer, Control J on a PC. And you'll notice that it also has the built-in smart filter connected to the smart object. So it's just a duplicate. I can double click Camera Raw filter, brings me back, and minus a couple times. And then right at the top, on the right side, it says black and white. When I click on that, it converts to black and white.
Cool.
And then what you should do though is never just click on black and white and say, okay, that's fine. You click on black and white and then you look down a couple panels down and you see black and white mixer. And it's funny when you hover, it says color mixer, but you're already in black and white. It's funny. But you have two options. You can try to remember what colors are in the different parts of your image, or to make it easy, you just click on this target adjustment tool icon you see in the top right. So target adjustment tool, big fan of it. Okay. Once you choose the target adjustment tool, you just hover over your image and it reads the color for you. So it knows that this is kind of like orange here. The background has green in it. The shirt has like blue. And all you need to do is with the target adjustment tool, you just click. As you click to the right, you're lightening that area. And if you click and pull to the left, you're darkening that area.
Oh, wow.
So it's a nice way to be able to change. Somewhere it's too low. Okay, whatever. Click. It doesn't like me doing that. Okay, so then if I click and pull, I can make it lighter or darker in certain areas. So it's just a way to kind of add contrast to your black and white mix. And there's a method to the madness. So what I'm trying to get you to see is you don't want to just do a simple black and white conversion by clicking the black and white button up top right. You want to go down to black and white mixer and kind of add more contrast to it. Because then when you go to color grading and you go to global, now when you click on it, you get this kind of nice color.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's if you choose global. And then as you pull back in, it's, more subtle blue. And here's more of saturated blue. And then of course you could just go around the whole color wheel and choose any color you want. So blue, and I can bring it back. So it's a little bit of blue. And then if I don't want to use that kind of tint, you do have access to the different shadows, midtones, and highlights once again for color. So I could say, well, how about like a duotone or two color thing? So I could say, I want the highlights to be a little bit of like greenish, but not so strong. So I pull it towards the middle. And then I want the shadows to be kind of maybe a bluish or bluish purple.
Oh, cool.
And maybe purple kind of has an interesting effect.
Really
so
cool.
Purple and green. There's the purple and green me.
That's really killer.
Okay. I look a little sickly around the eyes, but otherwise it's kind of a creative effect.
That is amazing though.
And then once again, you'll see it's the top layer with the Smart Filter layer mask. I can click on that, choose my brush, and just be careful when you hit the B for brush tool. It will cycle through, and I don't want to be on the pencil tool because that's like a hard edge. So I just choose brush again or hit B a couple times. Now with black as foreground color, flow, I'll hover and bring it down to more like a 20, 21, 20. There we go, 20. Now I can take it away areas where I want maybe the original color to come through. So I could have like my face and neck kind of in the original kind of skin color, but have a little bit of that blue tint to the t-shirt and the background.
That's wild.
And so the reason why the background is not showing it, because we already had erased it in the original layer mask. See the black on the edges?
Yeah.
All I do is switch it to white and then paint in white, and there's that green again coming back in. So the layer mask gives you full control of what you want to show, what you want to conceal, and what you want to show. So it gets pretty creative. You can play with it with the camera raw.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, tonal corrections and color grading. And then I thought to kind of pull it together at the end, just to do a simple composite, just to have fun with it. And then you can let me know some questions. So do you have any questions now, or?
You're blowing me away. I mean, I'm going to be living with this video to watch over and over and over.
Yeah, and take notes and go.
I have a notepad, but I mean, I'm dumbfounded right now. So just keep doing it. This is amazing to watch.
Sure. So I'll just kind of show like the basics of a composite, and then you can ask any more questions you might have. But so just so you know, this is how I tend to create some of the work I do. First thing is I have a set of actions, and I can even like email that to you, Ray.
Okay.
And it has the things that I work on a kind of daily basis, and I just kind of color coded them. But at the top, you can see I have one that's just art 12 by 12. And just by clicking on that, up comes the custom thing that says it's already set to 12 inches by 12 inches at 300 pixels per inch, which is good for print. And then I can make any variation of that by duplicating it and making it more appropriate for Instagram or Facebook. But I originally create all my art at this higher resolution in case someone wants to buy a copy of it, which I have sold my work a bit. So I start off like that in case it needs to be printed. And then I'll just call this, composite or whatever the theme might be. And it already has the digital art by my name put in. So you can create an action like that. So whenever you create a preset size, it already has kind of like your, digital art by Ray type of tag to it. So when you upload it, the SEO will find it as well. Okay, so then it just creates this general new file. And of course, you can also go to File, New, and then type in 12 by 12, 300, or choose a preset. But this is my base. And then what I'll do is I'll go to this image. And, you can just, with the move tool, just click in the middle of any image and drag it into the one you want to take it to. But I like going to the layers panel. I see where it says background. I hold the shift key and just click and drag to the middle, and it drags it in.
Oh, very cool.
I then click on the original, click the red button, it goes away. And then I'll hit the F key. So I'm just focusing on this image. And just to clarify, the images I'm working on today are stock images I get from Pexels.com. Pexels, Pexels.com. Good source, get some free stock images. And I'll mix it with some of my own photos at times and textures. So as you can see here, the image doesn't really fit the kind of square layout. So what I'll do is I will just right click on that layer one and say convert to smart object. And I'm not even sure I necessarily have to do this to resize it, but I've gotten so accustomed to doing it that I feel like it preserves its original quality. So I do a Command T. Once you do Command T, you get a transform toolbox, shows you the bounding box. Hold the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and as I click and pull, it does both sides, and I can resize it to fit that template size.
Okay.
To make the overall size of my PSD file smaller, I can right-click and choose Rasterize Layer. It's no longer a smart object, and it makes a little bit smaller file size. I hit the F key a couple times. I move this over. And I was thinking of a fun effect. I can either bring this image over or this image onto that and see. So maybe I'll bring over the clouds first. I go to the background layer in layers panel. Holding shift key, I drag it over to the middle. Hit the F key. Once again, it says layer 2. Now, I'm not sure if you know this, but so everyone knows, any layer that you've dragged over, it says layer 1, layer 2. If you click on the name, you can rename it. So I can just call it sky. Okay. And then if I right click once again, convert to smart object, Command T. And I think it's also just under layer. I'm so used to doing the keyboard shortcut that when it comes to that, it is under edit. So if you wanted to do it directly, it's edit, transform, but you'll also see free transform, which is the Command T I've been using. And if you choose transform here, you can go to a direct thing like scale, rotate, skew, distort, or perspective. So I could technically choose scale, but I'll just do free transform. You see the bounding box, and then I do a option from the one side till it pretty much hits the edge, and hit enter or return. Command minus to zoom out. And then once again, I right click and rasterize layer. And then what I do for a lot of my compositing effects is with that layer on top, you have a whole bunch of layer blending modes. And you could understand that like when you go to the first section, it kind of blends it in a darker way and then in a lighter way. But I tend to like to just really look at my image. And so what I'll do is I choose the move tool, holding the shift and the plus key, Holding down the shift key, I just keep hitting the plus key until it toggles through the different layer blending modes. So this is lighten, which is one I tend to use a lot. Screen, color dodge, etc. Overlay. Overlay can be a really good one to adding textures to someone or something. In this case, it's a little dark. So I think I'm probably going to end up going back to lighten, but I cycle through anyways, just to kind of zoom through. And then I'll zoom through until I find one I like. And in this case, it's lighten. So you lighten, didn't really do much to the image besides changing its layer blending mode, and it has a pretty cool effect. Hit the F key a couple times, go over here, drag her over to the middle, hit F key to see everything. And I'm just going to do a Command T. And then I can't see the bounding box. So on a Mac, I do Command 0. On a PC, Control 0. Hold the Option key and then drag a corner, make her smaller. And then while I'm in free transform, I can just go to any corner point and it changes from a regular arrow. Let me zoom in for you to a rotation icon. Okay. So you can see the double arrow rotate. Then when I go like this, I can rotate her. So, and then I do a Command minus a couple times. What I might do is do a Command T again, Option, and make her a little bit smaller so that she's kind of like floating through. All right. So, I mean, dramatic background image, adding another image that has nice textures or colors, such as a blue sky, and then silhouetted image. And you'll see a little bit of trail of the yellow background. It's not a perfect silhouette, but it's fine for what I'm doing. And if I wanted to, I can zoom out, zoom in this way. I go over to the layers panel. I could click back on the layer mask, and with a brush, I could erase the edges a bit. And, you know, if I wanted to add a little bit more of a kind of creative effect, I could go to this layer, shift click to drag it to the middle, and then you just change the order it's in. So I bring it underneath her, hit the F key, Command plus, zoom a bit, and then change the maybe overlay. Let's see if overlay. No, it's too dark. But so I might just zoom through again. So shift plus while I'm in the move tool. So move tool first, then holding shift and then hitting plus various times. I can cycle through the layer blending modes. Not working as good as I kind of envisioned it.
I'm blown away, Andrew.
There's kind of some cool effects you can create. So if you knew that there was light trails, you could use layer blending modes as a way to, like, it's a little dark, but it isn't bad. So one way I can incorporate the two is I can, on layer 3 here, I click on that add layer mask at the bottom. You can see the layer mask here. Choose B for brush and toggle. So black is the foreground color. And then when I paint, I can erase partial image from the background to kind of blend with these kind of streaks of light. And so I'm just painting to reveal the original clouds and kind of alleyway image.
So black reveals and white conceals.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well.
Yeah. Black reveals. Is it black reveals, white conceal? But you can also think of it as just as black will erase and white will bring back. So if I'm painting with black, it's erasing. So as an example, if I just go to this layer, you'll see that I've erased all this, and that's what's showing you the original image from behind. And so therefore, if I toggle white is my foreground color and then I paint, it brings back that original top image.
That's cool.
So you can just hit X. So if you hit X while you're in the brush tool, you can toggle between erasing and bringing back, you know. It's kind of a cool effect with these kind of lights.
That's really cool.
Just bring it back. And then what I might do is go up to the options bar, go to flow, hover over the word flow and make it a bit stronger, like a 40. So then when I paint, it's a bit more kind of strong in certain areas and I don't have to go over it again and again. Reminds me of like Doctor Who. Do you remember the show Doctor Who? English. Ding, 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 ding. So But, I'm just trying to show you different, quick ways of doing different kind of effects and, blending. But yeah. So that's kind of like a quick.
That is wild. That's wild.
I originally had this picture that I wanted to show that if I do Command J, turn off the background layer with the eye icon, go to the properties panel, and I say remove background. It reads it, and just in one click, it knocks out the background. And of course, there's certain areas you'd have to go back and paint. It looks like there's some extra background color on parts of them, or took out too much. But it's pretty good for one click. I can see the sneakers missing here. So, but any questions?
Dude, I'm blown away. I am so blown away right now.
Great. So yeah, selections, layers and layer masks, and tonal correction, and also working on color grading, and then a little bit of compositing effects and layer blending modes. So I said that I was going to focus on 3 topics, but we ended up talking about more like 6 to 8 topics. But
that composite was phenomenal. I've seen your work, and you blow me away with what you do. And now I got like a taste of what you do, and I'm going to be living with this videotape. Okay,
excellent.
I'm probably going to look like a real idiot to myself, but I'm gonna. I mean, that's phenomenal. Thank you. You're phenomenal.
Great. Thank you so much. And yeah, so thanks anyone who watched it live. And of course, this will be on my YouTube channel. So let me just remind everyone that to see my digital art, I tend to do slideshows. I might start doing some live creation of my art. I think would be a great idea on my YouTube channel.
I love it.
Photoshop and photography, focus live streams, and Photoshop tutorials. Just go to YouTube. That's my old one. Let me fix this. I always think that I fixed it, and then it seems to pop back. So do not be confused. I will save it. So Digital Art Drew. So just do a search for Digital Art Drew, either, youtube.com, put it in the URL, Digital Art Drew, or just do a search at YouTube for Digital Art Drew. Please subscribe. Please click the bell so you get notified when I go live. And I do tend to go live. I'm going to be going live again tomorrow to do a live event with my Photoshop and Lightroom group on Facebook. And so that is that one. So if you're interested in getting constructive criticism, want to share your work, I run the Photoshop and Lightroom group on Facebook. That's facebook.com, as you see here, /groups/Photoshop Lightroom group. Just past 285,000, maybe about to pass 286,000. So I will thank you so much, Ray.
Drew, thank you. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we might have to do another one in the future. I enjoyed this. Maybe we'll focus on like one theme and just let you ask me a million questions. So
I couldn't keep up questioning what you were doing because I had no idea I could even possibly do that myself.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could review the recording and then let me know if you have further questions. We can do another session on that.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. So thanks everyone for